Good Housekeeping, Module 2. Module 2 walks through the management practices that are required in a SWPPP and provides examples of each management practice. So the first management practice is minimize and prevent exposure. So it is what it sounds like. You want to keep things, locate materials and activities inside or under cover to prevent their exposure to stormwater, which would then prevent the creation of pollutants. So if you can prevent the pollution, you don't have to manage the pollutant. So you prevent materials and activities from being exposed to rain, snow, snow melt, and runoff. So here are a few examples. And again, these are examples. These are not specific requirements. Having management practices, those are the requirements, and these are just examples of ways that you can meet those requirements. So under minimize or prevent exposure, you could store materials inside and under cover. You could cover your fuel island with a canopy and conduct all your vehicle maintenance indoors, inside. Take time to review the management practices to minimize and prevent exposure at your facility. Good housekeeping is another management practice, and this is the stuff that you do on a day-to-day basis to prevent pollution. Make sure all your areas are clean. All areas that are exposed to potential sources of pollutants are clean. So sweep on a regular basis is an example. Keep trash containers closed. Keep storage areas well swept and free from leaking and damaged containers. And store all leaking vehicles needing repair indoors. And if that's not feasible, place a drip pan under the leak. So here are some examples. Could sweep your paved areas and store all equipment needing repair indoors. You sweep your garage floor and keep it tidy. If you have less stuff in the way that's randomly placed, there's less chance of knocking it over and spilling it and tracking it out of your facility. And then keep dumpsters covered. Keep that lid down so you're not mixing rainwater with your waste material. And then replace any leaking dumpsters or other storage containers. A few more good housekeeping practices. Run a dry shop. The less water, wash water, and wastewater that you're producing, the less you have to manage it. Fuel small equipment indoors. And then store all your oily rags in a sealed, labeled metal container that you send off for off-site laundering. Take time to review the good housekeeping practices used at your facility. So the next management practice is preventative maintenance. And again, it is what it sounds like. Keep things regularly inspected, tested, and maintained. Both vehicles, equipment, and any systems that you have on site. So prevent leaks, spills, and releases prior to them occurring. And then inspect these areas at least quarterly, your systems and your equipment. So keep your equipment and vehicles in turnkey condition. So keep equipment in good working order, turnkey. Routinely maintain equipment and systems and conduct repairs in a timely manner. Take time to review the preventative maintenance practices used at your facility. An SPCC plan, a spill prevention, control, and countermeasure plan, is required for all facilities that have an oil storage capacity of above-ground oil storage containers of 1,320 gallons or more. If your facility has an SPCC plan, you can reference it in the SWPPP for your spill prevention and response management practices as applicable. This will help limit duplication of information between the plans. So the purpose of spill prevention and response is to minimize the potential for leaks and spills and other releases. And your The management practices need to include a plan for effective response and include preventative measures, response procedures, and contact information. In terms of spill prevention procedures, you could have preventative barriers around your oil tanks, bollards or jersey barriers. You need to provide secondary containment. And back to the SPCC plan regulations, they require secondary containment for any container greater than 55 gallons. So that would be sort of the rule of thumb you'd want to aim for. And then material storage and handling. Around this outdoor above ground storage tank, you have guardrail and bollards to provide preventative barriers. For this drum of used wasted oil, it's being stored on a spill pallet. And for material storage and handling, you could use funnels or fill reels. So for spill response procedures, they need to be outlined in your SWP or referenced in your SWP. And they need to include notification of who you're going to notify when there's a spill, how you plan on stopping, containing, and cleaning up the spill, and also needs to include training. So if you have a spill, you need to notify the fire department and the Mass DEP within 2 hours of any leak, spill, or other environmental emergency that involves more than 10 gallons of petroleum product, more than 1 pound of hazardous chemicals, or it poses an imminent threat to public health or safety. And then you need to post the contact information for individuals and agencies requiring notification. And if you don't post it, you need to make it readily available. Your staff needs to know where it is, and they need to be able to access it quickly. An additional notification could be required to the National Response Center, depending on the amount of product that is spilled and if it has a direct discharge to a water body. Who do you notify when there's a spill? So here are some examples of spill prevention and response measures. So spill kits, you can't have enough spill kits, and they can be in many forms. You could have a spill kit cabinet here that comes pre-stocked. This is a look at the inside of the spill kit cabinet. Or you can have spill kit drums, or you can make your own spill kit. You could take a 55-gallon waste container and fill it with all the types of spill response equipment that you may need, booms and pads or speedy dry. And then it's advisable to have ample supply of speedy dry, various locations throughout your facility. Spill kits can be purchased as ready-made kits, or they can be made to suit. At a minimum, a spill kit should contain a form of PPE, personal protective equipment, a material used to clean up the spill. The amount of PPE and spill material in a spill kit will vary depending on the size of the spill kit. The number and contents of a spill kit will also vary with the nature, size, and location of the facility. Spill kits should be tailored to the site-specific features of a facility. A small spill kit could be stored in a 5-gallon bucket, and a larger spill kit could be stored in a larger container, such as a drum, garbage can, overpack container, or cabinet. Consider including protective clothing for 2 people in a larger spill kit, such as Tyvek suits, nitrile and neoprene gloves, vinyl or PVC pull-on overboots, goggles, safety glasses, and duct tape. Sorbent should be sufficient in number, type, and size to clean up a size of spill that is likely to occur at your facility. Heavy-duty plastic bags should also be included in your spill kit to contain used materials. Other spill equipment suggestions include drain seals, plugs, mats, and sandbags. All spill kits should be clearly labeled and covered. It may be helpful to have a non-sparking shovel, broom, and dustpan stored nearby. Example sorbents include granular, such as Speedy Dry, socks, pads, wipes, pillows, rolls, and booms. It's recommended to pack your spill kits with the protective clothing on top, because that's the first thing you'll use when you open the kit, and then pack sorbent socks needed to stop the flow of oil, followed by other sorbents and tools. For larger containers, consider placing the sorbents and tools in large, sturdy plastic bags that can be easily accessed without dumping the kit on its side. Where are spill kits at your facility located? What are the contents of the spill kits on site? We have two examples of secondary containment. This oil tank has a concrete wall built around it, and you can see all these small containers are held on a spill pallet, and this is also an example of a 55-gallon drum on a spill pallet. A few more examples of spill prevention and response. For transferring fluids, you can do them with fill reels or funnels. Transfer used oil using an upright oil caddy or oil drain or an oil caddy. And you should drain your used oil filters in 1-quart containers prior to disposal. Take time to review the spill prevention and response practices used at your facility. Another management practice is erosion and sediment control. These controls could be structural and non-structural controls to prevent sediment from leaving the facility. So you want to minimize or eliminate on-site erosion and sedimentation by stabilizing and containing the runoff from exposed areas. Some examples of erosion and sediment control measures would be flow velocity dissipation devices, so slow down the water. You could use a level lip spreader. You should seed any bare areas, don't have exposed soil, and stabilize slopes with erosion control blanket. Take time to review the erosion and sediment control practices used at your facility. So management of runoff at the facility. The purpose of it is to prevent or reduce the discharges of pollutants, and you want to divert the runoff away or around from the potential pollutant source. You should try to reuse, infiltrate, or treat stormwater prior to it leaving your facility. Take time to review the management of runoff practices used at your facility. Salt storage piles and piles containing salt need to be enclosed or covered if precipitation that would come into contact with them discharges to the MS4 or to a water of the United States. You should prevent the exposure by enclosing them, putting them in a shed or some other enclosure. And they need to be enclosed or covered within 2 years of the permit effective date. And then you need to implement measures to minimize exposure of the material when you're adding to and removing material from the enclosure. Example measures to minimize exposure when adding to or removing material from a salt or sand salt pile include, when possible, loading and offloading salt and sand salt within the contained area, not overfilling plow trucks, shoveling or sweeping spilled material back into the pile, and using care when adding material to the pile to keep materials in their respective areas. Here are just two examples of cover of sheds. We have a shed here, and here this is a structure that has 2 open walls on it. Take time to review the management of salt storage piles or piles containing salt at your facility. So another management practice is employee training. Again, you need to regularly train your employees. So all employees who work in areas where the materials or activities have the potential to be exposed to stormwater, anyone who is responsible for implementing the activities in the SWPPP, and then members of your pollution prevention team. And training is recommended to be annual. And all training should include the specific components of the scope of your SWPPP and any required control measures. So recommended additional training Each site is specific, has specific areas that could be proposed. They're all different, so we can't include all the required training for your specific SWPP in this type of setting. So additional training would need to be site specific on what procedures that you have in place at your facility. The individual responsibilities for your staff. So different people will be involved in implementing your SWPP. You'll have your mechanic will have certain responsibilities. Your foreman may have responsibilities. Your truck drivers will have responsibilities. Everyone will have different responsibilities, and those need to be reviewed with your staff. And then BMP implementation, the specifics on what type of BMPs are proposed for different areas, for different activities. And then the spill prevention and response, specifically on the location, use, and disposal of spill response equipment and supplies, and the emergency procedures and the contact list. And I had mentioned record keeping. It's very important. You need to document all your training. You need to include the date, the title, the duration, the list of attendees, and the subjects that were covered. So there are two ways to do this. You could have like here we have a sign-in sheet. You take that sign-in sheet that lists it captures who attended and the title of the training. But if you attach to that, if you have an agenda, so you would take your sign-in sheet and your agenda and maybe a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. That has all the required information that you would need for reporting to document the training. Or you could create a training log as part of your SWPP that includes the title of the training and the date. I would add the duration on here, the time, so the date and time. And here you can just list what type of topics and a little bit of detail on what was covered, and then make sure everyone signs in, but also you list who gave the training. Like today, I listed myself, but you would list whoever was your on-site training for the specific training that you gave. And if you're watching the video, you could reference the video and any additional trainers that were involved in the training. Take time to review employee training at your facility and identify additional training needs. So another management practice is the maintenance of control measures. So you need to maintain all your control measures in affecting operating condition. Make sure you have backup measures in place. So if one thing fails, you have something ready to go in the interim before it's fixed. You want to develop a regular schedule for preventative maintenance, and then maintain all your controls, both non-structural and structural. So some examples of non-structural controls would be your spill response kits and personnel training. Take time to review the maintenance of control measures at your facility. You need to inspect all areas that are exposed to stormwater or could come into contact with stormwater, and all the control measures. They need to be completed once per quarter and while the facility is in operation. So you need to do them during working hours, not in the evening or on Saturdays. Not sure you'd want to anyway. And then one of the quarterly inspections needs to occur while stormwater is discharging from the facility. So during a rain event or shortly after. So you need to document your inspections, and there's a lot of stuff that you need to make sure you document. The date and time is very important, as well as who was the inspector. And the weather conditions, which can affect the results, if it's raining or if it's windy, or you make sure you just document the weather. Include a description of any discharges that are occurring at your facility. Identification of any previously unidentified discharges. If you have some discharge that you didn't know about or was not occurring, say you have a non-stormwater discharge, you need to document that. Control measures that need maintenance or repair, so if there's any areas that aren't functioning properly or effectively. And you need to document any failed control measures that need to be replaced. And then also whether if the SWP needs to be updated, if you notice that during your inspection, you need to document that. So if new activities were added to your facility, that would require a SWP change, or if you have new control measures that might require an update. So there's specific things that will trigger the SWP to be updated. So if you do find that your control measures are not working properly, you need to make sure that they're repaired or replaced before the next rain event, and have backup measures in place in the interim. You need to include all the findings from the inspections in your annual MS4 report. So here is an example of a follow-up loop. You could incorporate this directly into your inspection form. So under your different areas that you're inspecting, you could have a note like, was any corrective action needed? So if yes, you would fill that line in on your inspection form. And then when corrective action is taken, you list what was done to correct that measure and the date that it was completed. So if you have all this information in your inspection report, it would provide a follow-up loop that you saw a problem, you took action to fix it, and you closed that loop. And then you possibly could also link this to any work order system you had. So instead of having it just on paper, when it happens, you could also put it into your work order system that correction action was taken and then it was completed. But you'd want to keep that work order report with your documentation for the SWP. What's good and what's bad? Good, there's secondary containment, labeled containers, containers covered, orderly. Bad, secondary containment is lacking, containers in poor condition, containers not labeled, disorderly. What's good? The hydraulic lines for the stored piece of equipment are capped or contained. What's bad? There's no secondary containment, unlabeled containers. Can you spot the main difference? The first picture shows the tank with secondary containment. What's wrong? The dumpster is leaking dumpster juice. What's good and what's bad? Good, well-maintained catch basin insert. Bad, catch basin is buried, unmaintained inlet protection. What's wrong? The bermed material storage area is knocked over. Stored material, in this case loam, is not being contained. In summary, the following are examples of management practices organized by type of management practice. Consider reviewing management practices with site personnel based on activities and areas that have the potential to impact stormwater. The following are links to resources referenced in Module 2.